Let's suppose that we're working with the following QL language. It has the proper names J and P, which refer to John and Paul, respectively. It has a one-place predicate G that expresses the property of being a guitarist, a one-place predicate M that expresses the property of being a musician, and a two-place predicate A that expresses the admires relation. Finally, let's stipulate that the domain of quantification for this language is all people. How would we translate the following claims into this QL language? 1, every guitarist is a musician. 2, all musicians admire Paul. 3, everyone who admires both Paul and John is a guitarist. 4, anyone who admires at least one guitarist admires Paul. Let's start with the first claim, that every guitarist is a musician. One answer that won't work is for all x, mx. That won't work because what that says is that everything in the domain, so every single person, satisfies the condition of being a musician. And the claim that we want to translate doesn't say that all people are musicians, it just says that all guitarists are musicians. But how do we write a formula that narrows in on the guitarists and just says that all of them are musicians when the universal quantifier has been defined so that it puts forward claims not just about guitarists, but about all people? What we do is we say that the claim that every guitarist is a musician can, in fact, in a kind of sneaky way, be seen as a claim about all people. It can be seen as the claim that everyone is such that if they are a guitarist, then they are a musician. So, moving one step forward in formalization, we can see the claim that every guitarist is a musician as saying that everything X is such that if X is a guitarist, then X is a musician, which, moving another step forward, gives us for all X, if GX, then MX. So that would be our translation of every guitarist is a musician. Next, we have the claim that all musicians admire Paul. Just like the first example, this claim is naturally seen as saying that everyone that meets a first condition also meets a second condition. Whereas our first example sentence says that everyone that meets the condition of being a guitarist also meets the condition of being a musician, this second sentence says that everyone that meets the condition of being a musician also meets the condition of admiring Paul. So our general strategy for translating this sentence is going to be the same, to translate the claim that everyone who meets a first condition F also meets a second condition G. We rephrase that as the claim that everyone is such that if they meet the condition F, then they meet the condition G. So in this case, we take the claim that all musicians admire Paul, and we first conceptualize it as the claim that everyone who meets the condition of being a musician also meets the condition of admiring Paul. And that, in turn, can be seen as the claim that everyone is such that if they are a musician, then they admire Paul. So we can use the translation for all X, if MX, then AXP. Next, we have everyone who admires both Paul and John is a guitarist. In other words, everyone who meets the condition of admiring both Paul and John also meets the condition of being a guitarist, which in turn can be rephrased as everyone is such that if they admire both Paul and John, then they're a guitarist. So we can use the translation for all X. If X admires Paul and X admires John, that is, if AXP and AXJ, then GX. Finally, we have anyone who admires at least one guitarist admires Paul. Here again, we have a claim of the same type as the others we've been looking at. It says that everyone who meets a first condition, in this case, the condition of admiring at least one guitarist, also meets a second condition, in this case, the condition of admiring Paul. So we can make progress towards a translation by recasting this claim as saying everyone is such that if they admire at least one guitarist, then they admire Paul. Which, moving a step toward formalization, would be for all X, if X admires at least one guitarist, then X admires Paul. Now, the only potentially tricky part is dealing with the X admires at least one guitarist. To say that X admires at least one guitarist is to say that there is an individual such that that individual is a guitarist and such that X admires them. So we can rephrase X admires at least one guitarist as there exists a Y such that Y is a guitarist and X admires Y. So for the completed translation, we have for all X, if there exists a Y such that GY and AXY, if there is a Y such that Y is a guitarist and X admires Y, then AXP, X admires Paul.